Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 4 of the We podcast. Today's episode is called Once Upon a Book. So, my name is Amanda, and I am again here with the one and only Dr. Art.
Hi,
Hi, Gudu.
Abby.
Hi, Dr. Art. How are you doing?
It's going good.
Very good. What's it like in Mumbai right now? Tell me it's like super warm and
Yeah,
lovely.
it's too warm for me. I can't
It's
can't tolerate hot weather.
if we merged, I think we'd have the perfect
Temperature.
temperature because this week it was like minus, I don't know. They kept saying it's -7, but it feels like -18. And I just remember when you told me that Mumbai is always like pretty consistent for the weather. So I was craving that this week.
Come here.
Yeah, deal. I'm always down. I always, for our listeners, I always joke whenever Guru like tells me what she's like eating or like uh, we start talking about Mumbai. I always joke like, okay, I'll be there in 18 hours. There's a direct flight. Like I really just need the budget or a plane.
I think next thing we need to buy is a jet.
Yes, I agree. I agree. And you might be wondering what any of this has to do with books if you listen to the title, but I will tie it in right now. So, actually, let me start with a question. Would you say you like to read, Dr. Art?
Definitely, I would say I like to read.
I like, I mean, you're a doctor, so I'm assuming you had to do a lot of reading in school. I certainly did, like, for my degree, and I do day to day in my job. But I think it's an entirely other thing to like read for pleasure. Um,
So, apart from, academic readings, definitely I'd like to.
yeah, and okay, so on that topic, and like obviously that's a leading question. I know you like to read. You send me book ideas all the time, like, hey, this I'm reading this book, or sometimes you just send me the PDF and you say, hey, check this out. Which I love to read as well. And anybody who knows me knows that like I usually have a book in my purse. I love to read that much. Now you can just have them on your phone, so it's like it's not as much of a flex as it used to be back in the day. Um, but so today we're going to talk about books, and specifically at the beginning when you hear us talking about wanting to own a plane and just hop on a plane to like fly around the world and do all these like fantastical things. Those are usually things children think about. So that was my way of, I guess, sort of introducing a childlike spirit. We're going to talk about specifically stories from like our childhood, and maybe we can. I want to say it's going to be dependent on if people like it, but I think I like books enough, and you do as well, that we'll probably make this a more than one episode kind of thing. Um, so, with that in mind, uh, you said you like to read. Did you read a lot as a child, or did it like? Do you remember when you discovered that you like to read?
I think since day I learned to read, I loved reading books. Though as you know that I don't have I learned English very later on in my life. Initially, as I'm a
Yes.
Gujarati and I was studying Gujarati, so I used to read all the Gujarati books. In my vacation, three things I used to do. One was riding a bike. We used to rent it, and then renting a book for a bookstore and eating. That's it.
Oh, I love that. It sounds like you like grew up in a fairy
Yeah, it
tale.
was.
That's beautiful. Like I'm picturing like
Like
those like
while telling
yeah,
you
yeah.
all those memories, it's coming live in my head.
Yes. You said something to me this week. You messaged it to me. I think it was just today. You said that this podcast is. I hope it's okay to share this because it was. You said a really nice thing when you said that this podcast is great because it's uh like has this positive effect that you're remembering all of these like great stories and we're just having all of these like lovely chats and um I I'm getting that feeling now as you're telling that story, but It just made me really happy because that's kind of the point of this podcast as well. Not just for us, like we enjoy talking to each other, but uh, you can just go back 3 or 4 episodes, folks, to episode 1, where we said that we like our conversation so much we didn't want to keep it between ourselves. So I'm glad you still have that feeling, and I hope our audience listening to it does as well. Um, but books can be tied to like good memories, right? Uh, we have like all kinds of, or at least for me personally, like I will want to read a different book depending on like the mood that I'm in, right? Or depending on the question in my head. Would you say that you're the same, or like is your book dependent on your mood? We had this conversation with food too, if you remember, and that was literally what you said. My food is dependent on my
So
mood. So are
so
books
the
the same
answer
for
is
you?
the same. My book is equal to the mood. I
Yeah.
mean, I'm very moody person. It comes out the way, you know.
Hey, we're women, okay? We don't like I don't want to get into those conversations because it's like it's way too controversial in 2025. But we can talk
And
about being women and
I'm
being
so
emotional.
moody
That's
that
okay.
I sometimes jumps the books. Like if something is I'm reading and I come across and I'm in that zone, I leave that book for that side aside for some time, and then I jump onto this book and I enjoy so much. And for me, it is so good that if I go back to that book, I have that same, I'm at that bookmark. I can catch up from where I left off. So that's a good part for me.
Yes, yes,
So
yes.
I enjoy jumping books
I
also.
love that. Yeah, do you read more than one book at a time?
Many times.
Like, are you same?
Sometime at the one time I'm open so many books and I read something from this, because I have so many things in my mind. I know from where I can get because of the experience I have till now. So sometimes it's one
Yeah.
passage a book.
Yes. Yeah. So sometimes I've found too, like, I'll be reading a book and it reminds me of something else that I've read. And so I have to put down the book that I'm reading and go and find that other book and read, like, okay, this I was reading, okay, yeah, and I go to the whatever part of that other book. Like, you don't have to read through the other book, you've already read it, but you read and then you can compare them in real time. This is something that I still have a lot of like hard copy books. Uh, I think like a lot of them were in like my childhood home, so I took ones that I really wanted to with me and sort of let go of the rest. But I used to have a big collection of books, and I insisted on always getting them in hard copy. Uh, there's nothing wrong with being digital, lowering your carbon footprint, or even just it's more accessible, I think, in some cases to have books on an electronic device. But man, to me, there's nothing better than holding up two books or holding up a book and seeing, oh wow, I read this much and I have this much to go. And if I just, read this many more pages, I'll be at this part of the book. And like, I love like folding the corners over and highlighting and like when the spine bends because you've read it like a million times, the physical copy of a book for me is like something so I don't know, like
It makes, like, touching it makes it real.
it's almost like it's more precious to me. The words themselves are more precious to me because it's like in front of me, I can hold it and like protect it. It's like uh
Because see, that is also our mind playing tricks on us. Like if we see in the mobile, we know it's a virtual word for us, so our mind perceives that way. And book is something we can touch and we can feel, so it feels real to us.
yes, yes. So
It's like, no, what I'm reading is real. I can believe that.
yes, and the other thing too is like both of us, for me, I had the internet and like a computer, I think, into my childhood, but the most of my childhood I do not remember looking at a screen unless it was a television or like you know what I mean, like like some screen like in a public space like that you're looking at like for directions. Other than that, like a cell phone was like a flip phone. You know what I mean? And I didn't have one.
Yeah.
I didn't care for one. So I think that
So for
factors in
in my
too.
life also, I got the cell phone very later in my life, like when I was in maybe high school,
Hmm.
because I was studying outside. So it was for my
Yeah,
SOS need, for the emergency only.
yeah,
And we used to talk on the, like, we are diverting from the books, but we used to talk on the STD phone, we used to call. We had to go to the booth, we have to dial a number, pay, and then call.
yeah.
It was like that for me. And for me, my dad has been a one person who introduced me to the books. So to get me know more about how to spend money or how to save, he allocated me 200 rupees
Mhm.
for a month. I can do whatever. That was a big amount in that those days.
Yeah,
So I can do whatever the, like, I can buy anything, I can save it, whatever I want to do with that money. That was for me, like letting me teach
give you the
how to
choice.
manage money.
Yeah,
But I still remember that was my, you can say, my impulsive buying or something. And I took permission from him before buying, because I was that kind of a person, that child, that back then.
yeah.
He gave me the money, and we went to a store. It was a bookstore, because for me, like, whenever we are traveling, I'll go to the bookstore, I'll buy a
Yes.
magazine. And like, we used to have, I don't know, you will never would have heard of it. It was like, it's a Indian, Gujarati, and Hindi. Now it is available in English also. It was called Champak, then Twinkle, then Phantom, Chacha Chaudhary. All these were kids magazines.
Yeah.
We used to. It was like a comic book. You will have pictures, you will have the dialogue, and you will have story like Akbar Birbal, and like Bikram Betal. All these things. So I used to get so excited for my travel also, that I used to go and buy every time. I have to buy one book. So what happened was, he took me to a bookstore because we were going somewhere, and I came across a Disney princess whole collection, like
Ooh.
from Cinderella
Yeah,
to Aurora to Snow White
yeah.
to Aladdin, like Jasmine. All the stories were there, but it was 215 rupees,
Ooh, so you're
and I
short.
only had 200. So I looked at my dad and he started laughing. He said, Today only I gave you money and you are looking at me." I said, "This is one." I don't know. I felt like this is the one time opportunity only.
Yeah.
If I don't buy this now, I'll never have this. And I still I have that feeling, and I looked at him, and he was like, "Oh, it's okay, you can have this, but you will not get any money for the next month, like till the next
Yeah.
month, and I'll deduct this 15 rupees from your
From
next
the
month
next
money."
one.
And I was like, "I'm fine with it. It's okay, you don't give me any money, I don't need it for the
Yeah.
next life also. It's okay, but I need this book now."
Yeah. You're like, Dad, do you know how many books you bought me
And
by buying me this one book?
yeah, oh my god, that was and he used to always, my mom and my dad were always used to make me feel happy, because my mom also used to read.
Yeah.
She used to read all the magazines.
Yes.
So yeah, I come from the,
She's the
it's in the genes.
yeah, and she has very good fashion sense. So I feel like that's like she would probably read more of like the Vogue type magazines. Like I don't know if is there like is there a Vogue magazine in India or like a Vogue equivalent? Like
We have
mhm,
in a bigger city now, everything, because of the social media and easy accessibility, we have it everywhere.
yeah,
But when I was going through, growing up, sorry, I'm
oh yeah,
fumbling again.
no problem.
That time, we used to have Gujarati magazines, Hindi magazines, and some of the English magazine, but Indian version.
Ah,
So we had to get the subscription. So each month we'll get the new edition.
yes,
So the names were like Gru Shobha, then Chitralekha. All these are Gujarati. Like we used to get it in
designers.
Gujarat.
Okay.
Then my mom used to read all these things. And G, it was a filmy magazine. Like you will get to know all about interesting gossip, all the new movie trailer or something like that
Ah,
in
okay.
the book, like poster form and all that. And then crosswords will be there. So it was
Very
good.
nice.
It was a good. And then one more book I forgot to mention was Safari. Safari was that time very expensive. And to get it subscribe also, it was very expensive. So I used to save money and get each time Safari, because it was a knowledge based book. Like
Mhm.
there will be articles about some things on science or something on photography. You'll learn a lot of things by reading that Safari. So it was a very good book.
That sounds very nice. And then some of those magazines sound like some of the ones that we have here. Like growing up, I used to buy. So People magazine is probably the magazine that's closest to the one that you said has the gossip in it and the crosswords, and because like there's a lot of tabloid magazines. There's the fashion magazines like Elle and Vogue, and I never cared for those ones growing up. We do also have
But I used to
Cosmopolitan
be intrigued
magazine.
because my mom used to read it, so I used to
Yes.
go through them,
Yes.
after asking her.
Yes. We haven't spoken about music yet, but my mom and my dad both like had like a deep love for music and like a big music collection. When we get there, I'll
We also,
we started
same,
talking about
same
music,
here.
but it was the same effect that you read the magazines because your mom read them. I listened to certain music because my parents listened to it, and to this day still do. Um,
So we didn't own the car till 1995. So that was our first car after I
yeah.
think after Shivam was born, we got our first car.
Oh, wow.
Because we used to travel in bus and all, I always used to get magazine and all.
Yep.
After we got our car, we used to each time buy a cassette, new cassette,
Oh, very nice.
audio tape.
Very nice. So how many Mohammed Rafi collections do you have?
Oh, I have many. Kishore Kumar,
Kishore
Kumar
Kumar,
Sanu,
Kumar
Mohammad
Sanu.
Rafi.
Yeah.
Like I still have those cassettes. I think somewhere in my
Oh,
house.
wow. If you find them, we have a boombox. We'll
And
play
I still
them.
remember, if it gets old and it gets stuck, then the whole reel will come out, and then you with the pencil,
Yes.
you just
Yes, you have
make
to
it
wind
right,
it
and if
back.
it works, then you feel proud of yourself that, oh, I made it work.
Yes. Well, as you're winding it, you're praying, right? You're like, oh my God, please work, please work, please work, please work, please God, please.
So it was a simpler time. I
Yes,
think.
I think so.
And
I, I think
yeah,
we've
and
painted the sorry, I cut you off. I'll get back to you in a second, but just
no, no
for our
problem.
dear listeners, uh hopefully we've painted a good like setting and you're feeling very much in your like 90s nostalgia, or if you happen to be a millennial listening to us, you're awesome. Thank you for doing that because I don't a lot of millennials just think I'm old, and I guess I am to them. But if you're listening, hopefully you feel the magic of the 90s and the 80s, because it's very real. Guru, tell me what you were about to say, and then I will. I'm gonna get back to books for us specifically, and I'll ask you another question. But yeah, tell me.
So, what I wanted to say is, actually, I wanted to ask you something, but before I ask you, I just want to say that, right now, maybe they feel that we are old, but
Hmm.
I think I understand now when my parents talk about something which I don't never used to understand, because, those were the simpler time for them.
This
Like for
exactly.
us, that now I think with the AI coming up, I think in next few generation we'll be talking about, like, no, what's suppose easier, like it was a simpler time, or Facebook
Yeah.
was a simpler time, Insta was a simpler time, something like that they will say. So it's just a generation gap, I
I
think.
completely agree. Our generation's gonna be the generation that's like, remember when customer service used to be people? That's our generation's gonna be our thing.
Yep.
Like,
Now only thing you can get through is, it's so difficult to get through a human voice in that chatbot or whatever
yeah.
they put it, I don't know.
Uh,
So, I know we are moving away from topic, but I want to ask you, as see, we both had different childhood, but we are so much alike as a person. I want to ask you that which book you would to like to read in the childhood.
yeah.
Like
So
for us, it was all the Indian books. For you, it must have been all the books we are reading now, right?
yeah. Well, I guess yeah. Depending. So for me, my father caught on really early that I liked reading. I always wanted him to tell me a story, like read me the Dr. Seuss books and the Robert Munch. Robert Munch is a very famous author in Canada. I think he is actually Canadian. And just like all of these different books. And as soon as he knew that I liked reading, he really encouraged that in me. Both my parents did. They were very supportive and bought me like as many like more books than I could even ask for.
Read.
Yeah, because they were probably relieved. Like, oh my God, thank God she likes to read. This isn't going to be something we're going to have to like push on her. Like she's going to like she'll be okay. So Early on in life, I discovered Robert Munch. Or not Robert Munch, I just said his name. Roald Dahl is who I'm thinking of. Roald Dahl is an author, I think he's British. Yeah, he is very British. Fought in World War II. Hasn't like an interesting like childhood. He went to like a boarding school. I think it was a boarding school or like a private school. After his dad passed away at a very early age, and his mom pulled him out of that school when she realized like he was being like obviously like teachers punished students physically and more severely it, pre World War II and probably post up in I don't know when that changed, but it was like abusive, like it was
Mm-hmm.
bad. So she pulled him out of that school. Anyways, he goes to become a pilot. This is all important, I guess, because the types of books that he writes. Uh, for me, I'd never experienced an imagination like this. And at such a young age,
Mm-hmm.
I was so impressed by the types of characters he created, and what they fought for. So my favorite book I would say as a child is like definitely Matilda. I could pick any,
Mm-hmm.
there's so many Roald Dahl books, like Charlie and the Chocolate Factory is his, James and the Giant
Mm-hmm.
Peach is him. Um Isayo Trot was his last one. That's one of my favorites. The Twits, The Witches. I'm listing all of the ones I can think of that were made into movies. Um
Mm-hmm.
and Matilda was made into a very famous American movie. The
Yeah,
uh,
so I got to know about the movie first, and then I got to know about the book
about the book.
later on in my life.
Yes, and so Danny DeVito's in the movie. It was his like project, I think. So it
I
became
still remember the way she, puts a bow
yes,
on, little Matilda puts a bow on her.
yes, yes. So the reason why I think Matilda is the story I always say is my favorite. And by the way, have you read the book yet? You have.
Yeah.
Okay. Because if you're listening to this right now and you're thinking, "Oh my God, I loved that movie," I'm always the type of person that wants to read a book when I know that there's a book, but I would very much encourage people to read the book because there are stories and parts of the book that they don't include in the movie. There's this whole bit about like a parrot in the chimney. It's hilarious. But anyways, what I love about Matilda is that she is a child who is very intelligent, and like from an early age she learns to read. You can see similarities, except her family is like they don't encourage her to read. My
Weird.
family was
Yeah.
supportive, right? But her family's like very mean to her. But what I loved was like the description of like, so her family's watching TV and she's reading in front of the TV. I used to do that. My family loved to watch television. They love they love media like that. And I loved television
Mm-hmm.
too. Don't get me wrong, but I loved reading so much that just to spend time with my family, they would watch TV and I would sit with them, but I would read. So I thought it was cool, and like I felt a connection to this character. She's misunderstood. She's like very like into reading and she loves knowledge, and then she has superpowers. I obviously knew I didn't have superpowers, but she was very powerful. She could move things with her mind. She was telepathic. And what I loved about it was that in every situation that they describe her being in, she's surrounded by darkness, right? So at her home life, her family is like basically like abusive to her. They pick on her, they call her names, they don't encourage her at all. Then she goes to school and she ends up going to this
Mm-hmm.
school where there's an abusive principal, like literally, it's
Mm-hmm.
like terrifying, right? The teacher that she has is wonderful, but the teacher's also being oppressed by the principal. It's a long, complicated story, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so Matilda uses her powers for good. This girl had absolute control. She could have just done whatever she wanted. She could have been like the biggest
Mm-hmm.
supervillain ever. Um,
Mm-hmm.
she didn't have anybody really telling her what to do, and she chose good. And she chose like supreme good. She stands up to the principal. She stands up to her family. She like so I went to Catholic school growing up, right? So we were told that in school to be a good person because that was part of the religion. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but here was this story where they didn't even mention God. Like they didn't even talk about religion at all. It was just this girl, and she was still doing the right thing. So I think for me, like as a young kid who was like different, in
Mm-hmm.
many ways, I just really loved the idea that goodness can exist like that, and that you can
Mm-hmm.
have powers, but you can use them to help people. I love that. Like when you think, I know I mentioned Dark Romance, the song in the last episode, when we talked about love, but it's like that concept keeps coming back. I feel like this world that we're living in, there you could argue like light and dark is always in the balance, right? That's the yin yang.
Mm-hmm.
But there's an it seems like an overwhelming amount of darkness that surrounds us, like in recent years, right? Especially like in Canada, when you look at like the deterioration of our economy in the last 10 years, there's a
Mm-hmm.
lot of like desperation. And so to be a light and to try to be a light in the darkness is just like a theme that I can clearly go back to my childhood and trace. And this was like a
Mm-hmm.
really like long explanation of Matilda, but like it really is, I feel like, such a good book, and was so influential for me as a child that I didn't even realize it until I saw the musical. The musical came out a few years back, like I think like 5-10 years ago. They turned it into a musical again and started performing it.
That one I have not seen.
Oh,
Yeah.
it only I saw it in I saw it in New York. I think I went to New York. I was a student teacher at the time, and I got to go to New York with my students, which was like so cool. But anyways, we saw Matilda there, and I fell in love with the story again, and I was like, I gotta go back and read the book. And so you gotta read. If you're listening to this and you don't, hopefully, I've inspired you to like at least like, I don't know, Google it and read the Wikipedia synopsis. Go watch the movie, read the book, but like this is a story people need to know. So for me, it was Roald Dahl, and it was just like all of his characters had the same presence as Matilda. And just like watching that over and reading it over and over again was just like really encouraging for me. Um, because it
Mm-hmm.
also made it okay to accept that there is darkness and light. So it's
Mm-hmm.
like he was really a genius writer. I mean, he's very popular for a reason. But anyways, um, now that I have uh, made Roald Dahl hopefully more popular in the world, tell me, what was a favorite story for you as a child?
Yeah, so same, this book was you. I think we have talked about it briefly earlier also. That when I used to, like, on my vacation time, I used to go to my grandmom's house, my
Yes.
mom's mom, my nonna's house. And there I used to get my pocket money for the month, and then my things were sorted. I'll go for cycling. I used to, like, we could rent the cycle, like 1 rupee you will get for 24 hours or 12 hours, or depending on how much you pay, you could get the, like,
Yep.
you have to just return the bike, that's it.
Yep.
So that was my one thing. Then second thing was, there was another, like, beside the cycle place there was a bookstore.
Yep.
It was a stationery shop actually, but what he did was he turned it into a library as well. So you can rent a book for a
Mm-hmm.
week or a day or a two, depending on how much you are paying him.
Mm-hmm.
So from there, I that was my first novel, or the book you can say, which was a little bit more than children, I think.
Yep.
It was a Gujarati version of Odyssey.
Mm-hmm.
So that time I never understood that it was the Odyssey. It was written on that, but maybe as a child I was not aware, and that time internet and everything was not so like, it was not so popular. Later on in my life, I realized that it was that Odyssey.
Yes.
And the way they describe the translation or the storytelling was so good. So I used to get, flown away, or with the imagination I could see in my mind the how he's struggling, how he's coming back home, how he's fighting everyone, and used to inspire me that, even in the bad situation you can come out of it.
Yes. Yeah.
So as a kid, I used to rent it almost, because I will finish it and I'll go back again and I'll tell I want the same book. So I maybe the person knew. So I asked him, can I buy this book? And he was so generous that he literally, sell me for 5 rupees or something.
Wow. Wow.
And I think I still have that book
I love
somewhere
that.
in my house.
Okay, I would if you let's next time I come, let's look for it. I would love to try to
Definitely,
find
we
it
are
with
going to
you.
find it out. I'll show it to you.
Yes, because the Odyssey is that's actually a like part of like the canon. So it's like a classic
Mm-hmm.
of classics. and it's
Mm-hmm.
sort of inspires like a very popular story arc. Anyways, I will not bore our readers any further with that. But if you've heard the title of the Odyssey, the story itself is just very like, oh gosh, what's the word that I'm thinking of? Like you almost feel like
Grand.
yeah, grand,
You are
grand.
in that. Yeah,
Yes,
like you are in the some show, and everything is going on in the
yes,
like play, and something is playing in your head.
yeah,
It's like a theater.
yeah. It's like magical. It's like
It's like
very,
a,
it's epic.
yeah.
It is an epic. It's considered a Greek. I think it's
Yeah.
considered a Greek epic. Oh gosh, someone please correct me in the comments because I'm wrong about that. But I don't know how to
So
classify
later
it.
on
But
in my life, I read
hmm
the one sentence somewhere. I don't know if it
hmm
is right or wrong, but they say that Odyssey is something like Ramayana
yes,
to
absolutely. It's a foundational
Indian
story for
Hindus.
sure. Yeah, it's not a religious story. Like I know
No, no, like
Ramayana,
it's
but
like
cultural.
like if you see Ramayana,
Yeah,
it's like a king who is we consider Ram a god, but for a person who are not Hindu,
yeah,
they see it as a story, right?
yeah,
So it's similar of his journey of his struggle and coming back home. Like
yeah.
I'm not saying it's the same. I'm
Yes,
just saying
yes,
that people can relate.
absolutely. Yeah, no,
And as a kid,
I agree. Yeah.
yeah, and this brings some another curiosity or some. I told you, it's you opened the box of Pandora's in my
Yes.
head. I never knew that I read so many books, and today when I was thinking about it, I was like, oh my god, I have done so many things.
It's true. You sent me the piece of paper where you sent me a picture and you were like
Yeah, I was
this.
scribbling,
Yeah.
yeah, and I was like, oh my god,
And you showed me where you
I have lived my
started
life.
and yeah. Well, and that's why I said at the beginning, this will definitely become a series because we just talked about childhood. Imagine we love to read. We
Yeah,
spent this much time talking and we have barely scratched the surface. Uh, uh,
and you.
yeah.
So when I was a kid, somewhere it got the curiosity in me that where is God or something,
hmm
like I wanted to find God.
Yeah.
So as a Hindu, I was born in a Hindu family.
Yeah.
So I started to read Bhagavad Gita.
Yes.
I used to read it in Gujarati because that was a comfortable language for me.
hmm
So then I read about Ramayana, like Tulsidas form, Valmiki form, both the Ramayana I still have.
Yeah.
And Mahabharata I wanted to read, but my grandmom was very like she used to tell me a story, but she never used to let me buy a book because she used to believe that if we buy that book, then the
hmm
same story will happen in our house. It's kind of like bad
Ah,
luck.
okay. Like a weird prophecy.
So
Like a okay.
yes, yes.
Um, for the Canadian listeners, Dr. Art basically just listed probably. Would you call those the three most important Hindu texts? Like or the
Yeah, and
the
Shiv
three most
Puran also.
popular? Yeah.
Yeah, so Ramayana
hmm
is about Ram.
Yeah.
Shiv Puran is about Shiv story, and Vishnu Puran is about Vishnu story. So I have gone through all of them as a kid. I have read every like each of the book. I have every.
That's
So Shiv Puran I have, Vishnu Puran, and this Ramayana also I have. Vishnu Puran was with my grandmom. I read from her book.
yes, yes. Uh,
I never used to own it.
okay. Okay. So I think I know the next book series then. Maybe we'll have to go through some Hindu books then and educate our Canadian listeners or North American listeners or I guess whoever doesn't isn't up to date, including me. I know some of them. I've read some of them. I've read some of them in part. Some of them I just know the story. But um,
Even
that could be its own series.
even we have Gujarati writers, very famous Gujarati writers like Jawahirchand Meghani and Dalpat Rai. They have lot of good
Mhm.
like Gujarati
Yeah.
what do you say, the scripts or something
Yeah.
they have written, that it's very precious.
Mhm.
I have read. I'm lucky that I have read through that. So how when I there was a school like when I was in 12th standard,
Mhm.
there was a school fair which we our school has taken us. It was a book fair, and that time I bought so many books, and my dad was like, "What are you going to do with these books?" I was like, "I'm going to read it."
I love that. Now, Guru doesn't just love reading. Uh, she's actually a writer
I
as
am a
well,
movie freak
everybody.
also.
Yeah. And yes, and you're a movie freak. But I wouldn't call it freak. I would call it a guru. Guru is a guru. There you go. Uh, but no, I was actually going to talk about your book, if that's okay. Um,
So whenever I used to read a book, no, it used to give me that feeling that how much good of that writer must have felt while writing this story, or the imagination to put
mhm,
it on paper, you know. So I always wanted to write a book. Initially, my thought was always like, because I was into Nicholas Sparks and all the, Chetan Bhagat and all this are like love stories or something like that. But my first, actually, I have co-authored a book, but it is not about any, romance or anything. It is my story of my struggles, you can say. It's my way of saying that, you can get through any situation. So I have stored my story. There is a book called Decoding Thyself. It's by Dr. Ruhi Satija, and she is a uh, psychiatrist and psychologist.
lovely
She's a
person.
like kind of my mentor,
Mhm,
and she offered me like opportunity to be a co-author. So in this we all, like many good authors came together, individuals came together, and we put our chapters, and we built a book for, if someone is going through a mental health or want to understand mental health, they can go through this book and they can understand from each other.
ah,
Like you will feel that you are not alone.
yes.
We feel that,
Anecdotal
oh my god,
accounts.
only the I am one who is, because people shield, they don't
Yes.
express how they feel, they shield themselves. So sometimes we feel that, oh, I think I am the only person who is going through this. And when I wrote this, like read those chapters, I think I was not alone, and I was very very grateful that I could be part of something like that.
Yeah, I think that that's beautiful and very brave to share your story because y- our stories are our stories. Like you could go your whole life and not tell a soul, but you had the courage um, and the skill, quite frankly, to be able to tell your story and at a level that it's now published. And it's obviously, I know it's a part of your story. Like it's your
It's
story.
not my whole story,
Yeah,
yeah.
your story would like of your life is probably longer than the Mahabharata in terms of like all of the experiences that you've had, and I don't even know about all of this stuff. Uh, uh,
Someone told me that if someone makes a movie on your life, it will be a very interesting movie.
yes, yes, I concur. But can you tell us where it is? How do people find your book? Like, we'll link it in the comments and stuff. But I'm your biggest fan and I'm a big supporter. I wonder if other people would want to read this book because, especially speaking from like in Canada, we used to have something called Chicken Soup for the Soul, and it was
I have read that.
you have okay. So when you described decoding thyself to me, that's what it reminded me of. I was like, oh my gosh, this is like Chicken Soup for the Soul, and I used to love those books because we can learn in two different ways, right? But
Yep.
when you attach story and now we're emotionally invested, I feel like that's when the learning sinks deeper, right? And you,
Mm-hmm.
like you said, you realize you're not alone. So if someone's hearing this and they're interested, where can they find the book?
So in India, it is available on Amazon and Flipkart. But outside India, I need to find out that
No
whether it
problem.
is available or not.
No problem. So okay,
Because
so
it's like it's not like we are earning from it. It's like a philanthropy work. We
yes.
just pay for the printing and people buy that stuff. That's
Huh.
it. There is no, commercialization of that.
I love that even more for the message because it just
Yeah.
reinforces that it's there for people to connect with and to help them hopefully. But there you go. Okay, so we'll link it for folks listening in India. Grab yourself a copy and you can learn even more about the lovely Dr. Art. And once we have more news or if we know if it becomes available elsewhere, then we'll just add. So if you're looking at this and there's more links, then you'll see it. But for now, I guess you got to visit India, everybody, to get yourself a copy of Decoding Myself. Or just if you're in Canada, you're probably looking to go to Mumbai because it's so cold here. But I think that we've definitely covered a lot of topics. I'm not gonna lie, based on the length of this conversation, folks, if you're hearing this, this might turn into like we might have to do this in 2 parts, but we'll see. We'll see. Either way, like another fabulous chat. Dr. Art, I really am loving this momentum that we have and what we're building. You can tune in next week, everybody, to see what we're going to talk about next. I'm going to give you the final word, Dr. Art. Can you please send us off and yeah.
Yeah. So I agree with you that this is not the full topic or conversation we can have, because I have not talked about the self-help book I have read and what I learned from them. So maybe we'll see how it goes. But I think today it's enough for the our jibber jabber.
Yes.
And I would like to thank our audience for listening to us and being inspired, or being supporting us. And I thank you and Vairagya Entertainment for giving me this opportunity.
And we thank you because you add so much to this and I you just like breathe so much life into this podcast. Thank you. Thank you for teaching us about like Indian texts and just giving us your experience. And yes, I agree with that as well. Thank you, listeners. Thank you. If you're just tuning in and it's your first time listening, we have 3 more of these you can go and listen to. If you've been following us the whole way, thank you so much. And we're just getting started. We got like so much more to talk about. But yeah, all right. Thank you. And see you next time, everybody. This has been the We Podcast. Once upon a book.
So 1 for my city, 2 for my city. God knows what I wouldn't do for my city. 3 for my city, 4 for my city. No, I'm the one who'd go to war for my city. 5 for my city, 6 is my city. Holla at me if y'all vibe with my city. Come try on my city, don't you lie in my city. Symbol of truth, I'll fight for my city.
The West East Podcast is part of the We campaign, also known as Anti-East Indian Hate Campaign by Vairagya Entertainment. You can weigh in on the conversation in the meantime in our comments section or on our social media. You can also visit www.imshivam.net/w.e. Remember, Vasudev Kutumbakam. We are all one family. Until next time.